In the intricate world of international relations, alliances are rarely forged out of pure friendship. They're driven by necessity and strategic interests. The renewed partnership between Canada and India serves as a contemporary example of this principle. After a significant diplomatic freeze in 2023, economic realities and mutual benefits forced these two nations to come back together, setting aside their differences. The United States, being their largest trading partner, shifted its economic policies, creating ripple effects across the globe that neither Canada nor India could afford to ignore. This shift necessitated a re-evaluation of their own economic strategies. Political disputes had previously stalled any progress, but the mounting cost of estrangement became too high to bear. The economic stakes were simply too significant. Behind closed doors, quiet negotiations replaced public displays of anger and frustration, as both nations came to the realization that their economic futures were intricately linked and at stake. The outcome wasn't a mere return to old ways, but rather a pragmatic alliance, carefully shaped by the demands and challenges of a rapidly changing world. This unfolding story serves as a powerful lesson in how national interests can override even the deepest historical grievances, paving the way for new beginnings. The post-Cold War era of a single superpower is gradually fading, giving way to a complex multipolar landscape where new alliances are constantly being formed. In this new global reality, agility and pragmatism are more crucial than ever, as nations navigate the intricate web of international relations. The surprising handshake between Canada and India was not just a diplomatic gesture, but a joint step into an uncertain, yet potentially more balanced, future. In the end, it was necessity, not nostalgia, that emerged as the true diplomat, guiding these nations towards a new chapter in their relationship. The thaw in international relations began with a shock that reverberated across continents. The US government rolled out sweeping tariffs and protectionist measures under the American Competitiveness and Resilience Act, aiming to bolster its own economy. Although these measures weren't directly aimed at Canada or India, both nations felt the economic pain almost immediately, as if caught in the crossfire of a trade war. Canada's deeply integrated supply chains with the US were disrupted overnight. Industries like steel, aluminum, and auto parts suddenly faced new and unexpected barriers. For Ottawa, this was more than just a challenge. It was an existential threat to its economic model, which had long relied on seamless trade with its southern neighbor. Meanwhile, India's burgeoning tech and manufacturing sectors, heavily reliant on US markets, were hit with tariffs that rendered their goods uncompetitive, threatening growth. The ambitious Make in India initiative faltered as exports stalled, casting doubt on the country's economic aspirations. Both countries witnessed declining exports, nervous investors pulling back, and rising unemployment rates, creating a sense of urgency. The source of their economic troubles was the same: US economic nationalism, which had inadvertently created a shared crisis. This shared predicament forged a powerful, albeit unspoken bond between the two nations, uniting them in their struggle. Policymakers in Ottawa and New Delhi quickly realized that they needed each other more than ever to secure their economic futures and mitigate the impact of US policies. The conversation shifted dramatically from past disputes to urgent cooperation, as both countries sought to find common ground and mutual benefits. Ironically, the US, in its bid to protect its own interests, had inadvertently pushed two of its key partners closer together, creating unintended consequences in international relations. Canada and India now faced a common challenge, and with it, a common opportunity to redefine their economic strategies. Their alliance was no longer optional; it had become essential for their survival and prosperity in a rapidly changing global landscape. The era of relying solely on the US was over, paving the way for new alliances and diverse international trade routes. Economic policy isn't abstract, it's personal. Every decision made in distant boardrooms or government offices ripples out, touching the lives of ordinary people in ways that are deeply felt. In Canada, steel towns in Ontario and Quebec saw orders dry up, layoffs mount, and local businesses struggle to survive. Once busy factories fell silent, and the heartbeat of these communities slowed. Workers who once thrived in an integrated North American economy now faced uncertainty and anger. The security they had built for their families seemed to vanish overnight, replaced by anxiety about the future. In India, textile hubs lost American contracts, pushing families back toward poverty. Women in garment factories who had become breadwinners now worried about how to make ends meet. and tech professionals in Bangalore alike felt the squeeze, as global uncertainty threatened their jobs and ambitions. Stricter US visa rules closed doors for Indian talent, stalling dreams and projects. Young engineers and students saw opportunities slip away, their aspirations put on indefinite hold. The pain radiated through communities, from factory floors to family dinner tables. Conversations grew quieter and hope was replaced by worry. In both countries, the sense of betrayal was real. Jobs lost to policies made far away, with little regard for the people most affected. This grassroots anxiety became a political force, as communities organized and voices grew louder. Governments in Ottawa and New Delhi faced mounting pressure to act, as citizens demanded accountability and support. The economic crisis was no longer just a headline, it was a daily reality, shaping every decision and every conversation. People demanded solutions, not rhetoric. They wanted real change, not empty promises. The urgency to find new markets and restore stability was overwhelming as businesses and governments scrambled to adapt. The shared suffering of workers and families became the true driver of change, forging new bonds of solidarity and determination. Economic necessity was now a mandate for action, pushing leaders and communities alike to find a way forward together. Diplomatic silence between Canada and India was costly, but economic pain forced a rethink. The first steps toward reconciliation happened quietly. Mid-level diplomats met at neutral venues, avoiding old disputes. They focused on the shared economic damage from US tariffs. Data and analysis replaced blame, shifting the conversation to practical solutions. Trust was low, but necessity demanded cooperation. Both sides agreed to compartmentalize their major political dispute, isolating it from economic talks. This allowed trade ministers to begin parallel discussions, even as public rhetoric remained cautious. The approach was fragile, but it worked. Quiet, pragmatic dialogue replaced frozen silence. Each small step built confidence. The focus was clear: stop the economic bleeding, restore trade, and protect jobs. The thaw was slow, but it was real. Diplomacy found a path forward by identifying a common enemy: economic instability. The stage was set for a new chapter. With communication restored, rebuilding trust was a step-by-step process. Trade talks quietly resumed, focusing on quick wins, harmonizing standards, simplifying customs, and digital trade frameworks. Each agreement, though small, rebuilt working relationships. Business leaders and academic institutions were brought in, pushing for faster progress and pragmatic solutions. A revived CEO forum gave industry a direct voice. Public rhetoric softened, highlighting shared values and people-to-people ties. Ministers spoke of potential, not disputes. The shift in tone prepared both countries for formal reconciliation. Trust was rebuilt, not with grand gestures, but with steady, practical cooperation. The turning point came at the 2025 G7 summit in Charlevoix, Canada. The Canadian and Indian prime ministers met, not with awkwardness but with a warm, symbolic handshake. Their joint statement announced a new era of strategic and economic cooperation. Comprehensive trade negotiations were relaunched, with an ambitious timeline. New partnerships in clean energy, AI, and public health were unveiled. The leaders promised resilient supply chains and streamlined visas for students and workers. The announcement energized business communities and reassured the diaspora. The G7 stage amplified the message: Canada and India were back in business. The handshake was more than a photo op, it was a public commitment to a pragmatic alliance. Quiet diplomacy had become a global headline. The Canada-India rapprochement reflected a global shift. US protectionism forced allies to seek new partnerships. For Canada, this meant accelerating trade diversification, looking beyond the US to the Indo-Pacific. India, facing its own vulnerabilities, saw Canada as a vital partner for alternative supply chains and market access. Both nations were recalibrating in a multipolar world, moving away from rigid blocks. Diplomacy became more pragmatic and transactional, focused on shared interests. The renewed partnership was a textbook example, not about history, but about navigating uncertainty. Flexible coalitions replaced old alliances. Canada and India's alliance was born of necessity, not nostalgia. Ordinary citizens and business owners drove the push for reconciliation. Canadian mayors and provincial leaders demanded action to save jobs and open new markets. Universities, reliant on Indian students, lobbied for restored ties. In India, industry groups presented hard data on lost orders and jobs, urging a pragmatic reset. The Indian diaspora in Canada, caught in the middle, advocated for de-escalation and reminded leaders of deep personal ties. Community voices became a powerful mandate for peace. The pressure was bottom-up, not just top-down. Real stories, not just statistics, moved governments to act. The chorus for pragmatism was impossible to ignore. The new partnership was about building a resilient future, not returning to the past. Canada and India prioritized secure supply chains, especially for critical minerals, EVs, and pharmaceuticals. Joint initiatives mapped out new trade corridors, reducing dependence on the US and China. Technology collaboration became central joint funds for AI, quantum computing, and biotech startups. Canada gained access to India's tech talent. India tapped into Canadian research. A talent mobility pact streamlined movement for skilled workers, students, and entrepreneurs. Mutual recognition of qualifications made cross-border collaboration easier. The partnership was built on people and ideas, not just goods. Together, they aimed to stay at the forefront of innovation. The alliance was a strategic bet on shared human capital and a resilient, interconnected future.